All right. Let's sit tall, close the eyes. Take a nice breath in, a nice breath out. And just allow yourself to arrive in the moment. And feel that you are here, completely occupying the space, completely present. Placing the right hand on the heart, left hand over the right. Take a nice breath in, a full breath out. And whatever obstacles there may be to listening consciously, to incorporating wisdom, allow those obstacles to be minimized and possibly even removed. So that whatever you hear today that's beneficial and supportive for you, so that it is absorbed, it sinks in. Hold a reverence in your heart for the sacredness of these teachings. The longevity, thousands of years old, timeless, in fact. Let us be grateful for all the teachers who came before and for all the teachers who will proceed after. And draw the hands together in front of the heart. We'll lift our voices in one Om. Take a breath in. Om. I'll share with you a mantra. Asato ma satgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And bowing the head to the heart, and drawing the face to center, release the hands, and gently open the eyes. And so we find ourselves together yet again, having this wonderful conversation about the wisdom teachings of yoga. And there are so many things that I would love to touch base with you today about. But I am going to refine it and talk about the Mother Durga. So we started this morning's meditation chanting Om Shri Durgaye Namaha. So let's just all together, let's chant that just a few times. So repeat after me. Om Shri Durgaye Namaha. 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 And then just closing the eyes, we'll sit with that for a moment. And then fluttering the eyes open. Om is the primordial sound of the universe. Bless you. It is the essence and the energy that is everywhere, in all things, and of all things, and what creates all things. It is also the name of the divine. So Om is it's a very large sound. It means so much more than we can understand. I don't think I realized that it was also a name of God, and potentially the first name of God, until years after I started practicing. And it came as an epiphany one day as I was perhaps reading the Mandukya Upanishad. And I must have read that 1,000 times, but it wasn't until the right time that I read it that I actually understood, oh, that's the name of God. So when you chant Om, you're chanting the name of God. And oh, that's the energy of God. So when you chant Om, you're also invoking the energy of God. And oh, that's the primordial sound of the universe. It's the material of everything that's out there. It's the essence, the essential energy. So it's so much more than what we typically understand it to be. We don't really, when we're chanting Om, we don't bring it to the front of our mind, oh, I'm chanting to God. No, we say it's some way to open a class, it's some way to end a class, has something to do with the material universe and the non-material universe. We don't usually link it with an understanding that that sound is the sound of divinity. It is divinity itself. And then Shri, as I said earlier this morning to those in the meditation class, Shri is also the name of a goddess. Shri, the name of the goddess. And Shri is also abundance. So if you looked in a Sanskrit dictionary, it would say abundance. It would say plenitude. It would say an always increasing amount, or an always enough, always enough. And so this is also a name of God. It's the name of the goddess. And it's also a reminder to us that everything is plentiful, and that all the time that we spend grasping because we think that we're lacking is actually a form of ignorance. It's one of the difficulties that we face as human beings, is thinking, I don't have enough chairs, I don't have enough mobility, I don't have enough eyesight, I don't have enough food, I don't have enough money. The reality is that the goddess is the truth. God is the truth. Abundance is the name of the goddess, one of them. Therefore, abundance is the truth. Therefore, lacking is not true. Lacking is the opposite of abundance. Both can't be true at the same time. So lacking is an attitude. It's an opinion. It's a difficulty that we face. Abundance is the truth. How do you tell that to someone who doesn't have enough food on the table? Well, somebody asked me that once. They said, how can you say that abundance is truth and lacking is not the truth when there are hungry people in the world? And I said, because hunger is caused by human ignorance. Hunger is caused by human ignorance. And initially they took that the wrong way. And I said, no, you're not listening to me. Conscious listening. Hunger is caused by human ignorance. There's plenty of food for everyone. There's no need for there to be hunger on this planet. But because human ignorance is in such a disease-ridden state, there is hunger because there are groups of people, conglomerates, who feel that they lack something and they need to have control, so they take the food and they give it out as they see fit. They create false market schemes and all these other things in order to limit accessibility. Limiting accessibility is not the natural state of abundance. Limiting accessibility is the ignorance applied by humans who have a diseased ego. So abundance is the truth. There's always enough food. But then the human being who is constantly seeking control comes in and says, but you can't have any. That's the difficulty, is to rejoice in the abundance, have faith in the abundance, and share the abundance, rather than be greedy and try to hoard to keep it for one's own self. So Shri, this beautiful name, this beautiful sound. I mean, it even, the E at the end kind of goes on and on and on. It's one of those vowel sounds that is just Shri. It could go all the way from here to the end of the universe. It just keeps going. And that's the essence of the goddess, is that it's just everywhere. It fills in every space, every nook and cranny, with beauty and delight and radiance and abundance. Then we have the name Durga. Om Shri Durgaye Namaha. So the AYAI at the end of Durga, the Durgaye, that's a salutation to her. It's a formality, Durgaye. The name is Durga. And Durga is, so much. First there's capital D and there's little d Durga. So when we have capital D Durga, we're talking about the mother of the universe. Literally, that is how she is referred to in Hinduism and in all related traditions, the mother of the universe, the warrior mother of the universe. She's often depicted with 8 or 10 arms, and each hand has some type of a tool or a weapon in it. So everything from a chakra or a lotus flower to a bow and arrow and a mace. So she's not just, this soft kind of weak feminine. She's not that. She's actually strong and powerful, and she's a warrior. She is the original warrior, original spiritual warrior, we like to call her. Exactly. And she is also compassionate, also empathetic, also generous, but she's also discerning and disciplined and strong and meaningful. And there's not really a middle ground there. She's patient, though. Her patience is that we move from a state of ignorance to a state of clarity, from a state of forgetting to the state of remembering, from a state of denial to the state of acceptance. Her patience is for the process that we have to go through in order to move from one state to another. And this is nowhere more clear than in one of the major stories about her, which I'm going to share with you in a moment. But first, I'd like to step back and say that the name Durga, the Divine Mother's name Durga, also translates as that which is difficult to attain and that which is indestructible. I couldn't get the word out. That which is indestructible. So that which is difficult to attain and that which is indestructible. Now when we look at the word Durga, little d, Durga, that's oftentimes defined as difficulty. Difficulty. So it makes some sense that one of her translations of the name is that which is difficult to attain because of all the difficulties that we humans encounter in this embodiment, the attachments that we have to everything from our injuries to our achievements, the attachments that we have to our beliefs in lacking and needing and wanting and desiring, all the difficulties that we face as human beings, that those are all obstacles. They all make it very difficult to meet her, to know her, to realize her. And it's only when through our spiritual path we come to a place where we're seeing more clearly, living more intentionally, and addressing face-to-face, one-on-one, each one of these difficulties that we have, that we actually begin to open ourselves up to the truth of her, to the essence of her within us, around us and throughout. What is that essence? It's energy. It's power. The Mother Durga is according to many of the stories, the first incarnation, the first physical incarnation of Shakti. What is Shakti? Shakti has been feminized because that's the way that the languaging goes. Something is either of a masculine nature or a feminine nature. Shakti is feminized. And Shakti is power. Power. All power. any power at all. The power of the little ant to pick up the grain and bring it back to its clan. The power of the sun to shine. The power of the moon to illuminate the shining sun, to reflect the shining sun, I should say. The power of you to blink your eyes. Power. And any kind of power. It doesn't matter. The power that runs through the electrical lines. The power of creativity, of Jolene creating each of one of these panels, and Troy creating the framework of the wood, the mahogany for the altar. Power. All power belongs to the mother, because mother is power. And without the mother, there can be no power. So she can be as patient as she wants to be, because the power of your ignorance as well as the power of your clarity are hers. So she can be patient with you and I, because she understands, she knows, such human words to put to such an effulgent being, but we say it the way we understand it. She knows the journey that we have ahead of us, because she is the journey. She is the journey. Does she intercede on our behalf and invest us with more power to become more clear? Certainly, from time to time. Why doesn't she do it all the time? Why doesn't she just lift the veil of ignorance away from us and let us live the peaceful life that we're meant to live? Because she's patient and she's kind. And on some level, we need to realize that not only have we been given this amazing birth into this human existence, to have all these beautiful experiences, and the treacherous ones too, but we've also been given another gift called free will. The exercise of our own free will. To dig ourselves as deep a hole, or to build ourselves a ladder to get out of that hole. And that is the gift that we've been given in this life, and she will not take that away from us. Because it's only through doing our own work that we come to the place of truly knowing her, truly knowing, truly experiencing, surrendering to through acceptance. If she just did all the work for us, then we would just take it for granted. Right? When my son was a teenager, he didn't like to clean his room. And so, like every good mom, I would get irritated and I would go clean it for him.
Take notes.
Take a lot of notes. Take a lot of notes. Take a lot of notes, because it goes on. It goes on for some time, you know. And each time that he doesn't clean his room within a reasonable period of time, according to mom gets irritated and goes and cleans the room for him. So what is he learning? He learned when he was a teenager that all he had to do was hold out and I would do it for him. He didn't have to do it. He didn't have to get his hands dirty. He didn't have to fold his shirts or put his underwear away, do his laundry, because someone else would do it for him. Now, granted, there came a time where I shifted. And what I said was, okay, so here's the new deal. Now, if you don't clean your room, next time I go up there, whatever is laying out goes in a garbage bag in the garbage. He got motivated pretty quickly after that first bag of garbage went out to learn how to do his own cleaning, right? So why am I sharing this with you? Because you all got to do your own cleaning. That's the free will. The consequence of your free will is that you got to clean your own house. You got to clean your own room and you got to clean your own life. And the mother's not going to come down here and do it for you. Even though she could. She could absolutely. With a blink of an eye, with a snap of a finger, you know, with a blown kiss. She could totally do it for you and take all your suffering away. But then you wouldn't know the value of doing it yourself. And you agreed to that the moment that you agreed to free will. So we have to work through our human difficulties in order to attain that which is difficult to attain because of those difficulties. And what we attain is an intimate relationship, whether you're a dualist or a non-dualist, whether you feel that the divine is, some kind of an entity outside of yourself or an essence within yourself. The only way to achieve intimacy with that entity is by doing your own work. Nowhere is this more clear than in the battle stories of Durga, the mother. So there was a time on earth when the men and the gods who were in charge had a dilemma. And they had a dilemma because one deity named Brahma, he liked his devotees to be very happy. And he had this one devotee who had been praying to him for thousands of years. And he was doing so a little shady, a little underhandedly. He was doing it because he knew eventually he would be able to go to Brahma and say, I want a boon. I want something back for the work that I put into it. And sure enough, that day came. And so this being went to Brahma and said, I would like a boon. I've been a really good devotee, and you don't want me to be unhappy because you don't want me to leave and not pray to you anymore. And Brahma liked to be prayed to, so he liked to keep his devotees happy. So he said, well, what do you want? And the person said, well, I would like to be immortal. Brahma said, I can't make you immortal. Even the gods aren't immortal. Even the gods have to succumb to the laws of nature, the birth, the maintenance, the destruction. So you can't have immortality. Choose anything else. And he thought, and he said, well, then I choose that I should not be able to die from the hand of any man, the bite of any animal. And so Brahma thought about it and said, okay, sure, no problem. Gave him the boon. But as soon as he got the boon, he became treacherous. He became an absolute tyrant. He started to take over kingdoms and squander and exploit and pillage and all the horrible things that you can imagine that someone who had that kind of power would do if they misused it. He did that. So all of the leaders of the earth, the kings and the leaders of the people and the gods, the masculine aspects of the gods, all came together and went to the Trimurti, the Trideva, the three. Brahma, which is the one who gave this demon the boon, Vishnu, the maintainer, and Shiva, the destroyer, went to them and said, you have to fix this. Brahma needs to fix this because he put this into play, and he said, I can't fix it. I'm a male. I've taken on a male form. I cannot fix this. You're on your own. And Vishnu came forward, and Shiva came forward, and some of the stories have it that Vishnu made the suggestion. Others say Shiva made the suggestion. Whichever one Shiva will go with made the suggestion and said, I know what we should do. We'll build a great yagna, a great fire, and we'll invoke the mother. We'll invoke Shakti to come in form. So they build this huge fire, and they stand around the fire, and each one of them has a skill, a mastery. One is archery. One is purity. One is balance. And one by one, they offer them their mastery into the fire. And as they offer the mastery into the fire, they chant Swaha. It's an offering mantra. Once they're done making their offerings, the fire grows very large and bright. And then the flames part, and out from the fire walks a lion. And sitting atop the lion is the mother goddess, Durga. She's in a beautiful red sari, red like those curtains, beautiful deep red. She's sitting to the side, kind of like English saddle, right, of a lion. right? The greatest beast of the jungle, we say, right? The lion. And here she is, dressed to the nines, this beautiful long black flowing hair, bejeweled, sitting to the side. She's not holding on. The lion is completely domiciled beneath her, carrying her as her servant. He is tamed by her because he knows she is all powerful. So he is her vahana, her vehicle, what takes her wherever she needs to go when she's embodied. He steps out of the fire and she looks at them and she says, "Why have you called me?" And they explain to her what happened. And they say, "Please, can you fix this for us? Can you make things right again? Fix Brahma's mistake." And she says, "Okay, certainly." Now remember, this is a good moment to remember that Durga is Shakti, incarnated. Shakti is power. There's no power that is not Shakti. All she needed to do in that moment was take her power back. Remember that. All she needed to do in that moment was take her power back. But she didn't. Instead, she went to a nearby hill and she disguised herself as a cowherd girl, a radiant, beautiful cowherd girl, second to none in her beauty. Knowing that this demon's, one of his attendants would see her and go running back to him. And that's exactly what happened. So one of his demons saw Durga on the hillside tending to the cows, went back and said, "Master, my lord, you have so many beautiful wives, but you don't have the most beautiful because she's tending cows on a hillside not far from here. Certainly you should have her. And then your wives would be complete and your life would be complete. Without her, you'll be lacking something significant." Trying to get in the good graces of the master, you know. So the master gives him a charge. He says, "Okay, then go get her. Bring her to me. Tell her she'll be married to me. And if she doesn't come, pull her by her hair. And if she doesn't come, tell her I'll send the armies out and they'll destroy all her loved ones and she'll end up coming to me and being my wife." And so the attendant goes off to Durga, approaches her and says, "My lady, I have a request, more of a demand from my master. He says you should come with me right now so that you may be wedded to him. And what an honor it will be to be his wife. You have no idea how wonderfully you'll be treated. No more herding cows for you." And she looked at him and she said, "Nope." And he looked at her and he said, "What? You don't say no to my master." And she said, No, I don't mean it disrespectfully." She said, "You see, as a young girl, I was very foolish. So very foolish. I made a vow. I made a vow to myself that I would marry no man unless he could defeat me in battle. So please go back and tell your master, I am more than happy to marry him, but he must come battle me first. And when he wins, I will be his wife, and I will be the best of his wives." The attendant goes back, gives him the report. Not happy. Not happy at all. So what does he do? You know, now here's, there's so many lessons up until now, but here's first big lesson. What does he do? Does he go on over to Durga and face her? No. He sends someone else to do his work. He sends Madhu and Kaitab, these two massive demons. He sends them over. He says, "Go get her. Don't take no for an answer. Any of her family comes out to support her, kill them, get rid of them. Just get her back here to me." So he sends someone else to do his work. And the two he sends are by no mistake super relevant to us on our spiritual journey. Because Madhu means sweet and Kaitab means bitter. He sends her sweetness and bitterness. hoping to confuse her, call her preferences into play, that she should far prefer the sweet to the bitter. And understanding the bitter that he can bring down on her, she would choose the sweetness of marrying him. That's not what happened. She killed them both. She slayed them both. She slayed both the sweetness and the bitterness because they both came from the ego. So lesson number 2. Number 1, you have to show up and do your own work. Lesson number 2, the first thing that you have to address is your preferences and everything that surrounds those preferences. What are the consequences of always going for what's easy, of always going for what's convenient, of always going for what makes us happy and satisfied? What is the consequence of that? And we touched on that a little bit in the yin class this morning when we talked about the necessity of diversity and experience. Right? We said colleges used to look for a 4.0 first. They don't look for that first now. Now they look for diversity of experience because they understand that the diversity of experience will more often bring about the healthy person versus just keeping your face in a book trying to get the 4.0. If university administrations are seeing this, certainly we can. That it is the diversity of our own experiences. So don't grasp so much on what you prefer, and instead remain open to what comes to you, and then face that yourself. Of course, seeking out the appropriate teachers and guides and mentors to support you in acquiring the skills that you need in order to face the difficulties. But ultimately, you're the one that has to face them. So the attendant goes back and reports this. And what does he do? Does he learn his lesson? He's a very good human. No, of course he doesn't. He's very human. He sends 2 more. He sends Munda and Shamunda, and he sends Simba and Nisimba. He sends 2 by 2, he sends them. And what is he sending her? He's sending her confusion, self-hatred. He's sending her distortions. He's sending her all of the difficulties of the ego. 2 by 2, he's sending them to her. And in sending them to her, he's attempting to break her down using egoic means, using the power of the ego. But that's so ignorant because she is power. And she is the source of all power as well. That's like saying, I'm going to take this little cup of water and drown the ocean. The cup of water that came from the ocean. It's not possible, right? Isn't that ridiculous? So he cannot use egotistical means to meet her. He can't. What can he use? Humility, humbleness. Do his own work. Go to her. There finally does come a time where she's slain so many of his generals and his top leaders that he finally does, in a fit of rage, go to her. He doesn't go to her to get her, though. He goes to her to kill her. He goes to her to teach her a lesson. He goes to her with the brute ego of force. He goes to her with the brutish ego of force. You ever go after something in your life with force? Does it tend to work well? It leaves a reign of terror behind and a lot of hurt and a lot of suffering. But don't forget that the power behind force also belongs to Shakti. But she goes with him for a while. She does this battle dance with him. For an hour time, what could seem like thousands of years, but for her, probably blink of an eye. Celestial time is not the same as human time. So she battles him. She meets him on the battlefield, and they go back and forth, and he keeps bringing forward all these different, entities, these different demons, and he brings forth this one demon called Rakta Bija. And every time I think of Raktabija, some of you have heard me say this before, I think of Godzilla, like in size. Like big demon, fire-breathing demon. He had one boon, besides his size and strength, is that in battle, if a single drop of his blood touches the ground, 10,000 more of him come up. Wow. He's going to be a tough one, you know. So she's on the back of her line and they're battling. And she recognizes that she needs another aspect of herself. Another aspect called Kali. The Kalima, the dark one. So from her third eye comes Kalima, the dark goddess, who has a gaping mouth and a lolling tongue. And she can open her jaw so wide that as Durga severed the head of the demon, Kali came in and consumed the entirety of him, and not one drop of blood touched the earth. That's a pretty powerful story. It's like, that's a lot of violence for a non-violent tradition, don't you think? Well, what it's displaying for us, what it's illustrating for us, is the violence of our own desires. Raktabija is our desires. That's what he represents. And we think it's great that we stop smoking, and it is. I'm an ex-smoker myself. I smoked back in my earlier days, and I quit many times. I was a professional quitter. You know, it's like over and over again. And it wasn't until I realized that I really needed something else to help me quit, because, you know, it's like a psychological thing. So I went and I got hypnotized. And did the hypnosis work? I don't know. But what they told me worked. And what they said was, every time you want a cigarette, say halt. Another word for stop. Halt. And ask yourself, am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Or am I tired? And address the issue. Show up and do the work. Stop hiding behind the cigarette. And that just struck me. You know, I added that last little part on because it fits right in nicely with what we're talking about, showing up, right? Like, if you're hungry, then eat something healthy. If you're angry, address your anger. If you're lonely, find a like-minded community where you can thrive. And if you're tired, go take a nap. Stop running yourself down. Show up in your own life and stop depending on the cigarettes to do it for you, because they're not going to. So she dances with him, you know. And she eventually, with Kali Ma, slays Raktabija, who is the reflection of our own desires. Because, like I said, you think, you know, you quit smoking, that's great. But you quit smoking, how many other habits did you pick up? Chocolate, coffee, you know. Something always replaces it. And potentially, many things replace that habit. So according to the Durga, what we need to do is finish it. No more desires. We need to become discerning and disciplined in our spiritual practice such that we say, I will not be led by my desires, period. That doesn't mean I won't enjoy life. It means I will not be led by my desires. And when we're no longer led by our desires, it opens us up to a truer kind of enjoyment, one that is not dependent upon happiness lasting and unhappiness never showing up. In true enjoyment, we meet whatever comes our way. We can't have unhealthy desires if that's the way we wish to live. If we wish to live fully and healthfully, then our unhealthy desires, there's not a space there for them, for that. So eventually, she dances with him for so long. And one might say, well, why doesn't she just finish him? Be done with him. Pain in the butt, right? No, that's her compassion. Her compassion to give him every opportunity to come forward in humility, to meet her and do his own work. But he is battling her, isn't he? No, he's angry at her. He's trying to kill her. That is not doing his own work. That's like the little kid who says, fine, I'll go brush my teeth. Right? And it's like, do you know that when you brush your teeth, you should not push on the toothbrush? But that's a habit most children acquired because they were angry at their parents, went in there and started annihilating their toothbrush. If you push the toothbrush into your mouth, the bristles fold over and you're not cleaning anything. So you have to be gentle and let the bristles not bend. Let them brush your teeth and get into the little crevices between the teeth. He needed this humility to stop coming forward egotistically and to come forward a different way. Inevitably, there came a point in time where she recognized, no matter how much compassion she extended to him, this was not the time. And that the earth was suffering, and people were suffering, and he was suffering. And so she ended him, which was the greatest compassion of all, is that she ended it. What does that mean? Oh, that sounds kind of dark. No, actually, it's not dark at all. Because sometimes when we're in relationship with ourselves or with another human being, the most compassionate act that we can do is to stop hurting that person, is to stop contributing to their suffering. With regard to ourselves, that is by way of change. That is by way of meeting life face to face and doing the work that needs to be done in order to become healthier. Healthier within and healthier throughout. And with regard to other people, it means to stop meeting them in anger. Stop being that demon. Stop being Mahishasura, that's his name, the buffalo-headed demon. Asura means demon, Mahisha, buffalo-like demon. Don't be like him, charging in to annihilate. No. But isn't that what we do in our relationships? When we get upset with somebody else, in some way, shape, or form, we either look to annihilate them or to annihilate ourselves. And that will never bring happiness, and it will never bring peace, and it will never bring the outcome that you're looking for. It never will. So we need to be humble and step back. Stop annihilating. Sometimes that means walking away from a relationship. And that's okay. Because sometimes that's the only skill we have, is to back away. As long as we know that's what we're doing and why. I'm moving away from this relationship so I no longer harm you. I'm moving away from this relationship so that I no longer empower you to harm. I'm moving away. And with ourself, I'm moving into this relationship so that I learn how to no longer harm. I move more deeply into the relationship with myself, learning about myself, meeting my life face to face, doing my own work, so that I can acquire the skills necessary to no longer harm myself and to no longer harm others. So the Durga, she sets a path out for us. She's not just a goddess to bow down to. Certainly she is a goddess to bow down to. But that's not all she is. When we look at divinity as something to bow down to, what we say is that divinity has no relevance to me. It only has power over me. This is not the truth. Durga is the power within you. Bow down to her, yes, but do so with humility, knowing that if you allow yourself to enter into a clarified relationship with her, a relationship of devotion, think of clarified ghee, clarified, right? All the impurities removed. If you come into a clarified relationship with her, all impurities removed, then certainly you will come into a state of being that is more complete, that is more true, that is happier on the most basic level, and then on every other level that follows. But as long as you look at her as some statue over there somewhere, this is Krishna, by the way, this is Saraswati, by the way, this is the Saraswati Mandir, in progress. As long as you just look at them as something else that has power over me, then you will forever only be a victim of whatever their whim is. But God is not a whim, and God is not a victim maker. Divinity itself has made you, and is everything that comes from you, and is everything that you encounter. And once you know that, then you start relating to the world differently and to the people around you differently. And then life becomes full, and your resiliency shines. And then it doesn't matter if the person took your parking spot. It doesn't matter if that other person insulted you. Those are not things for you to react to. What does it matter? Those are evidence of their suffering. You don't wish for their suffering, and you don't wish for your own, so you don't become involved in that. Instead, you experience the beauty of life more fully, and you also recognize the necessary suffering of life, and you are more empowered to address it fully by whatever means you have available to you. And that brings yet another level of contentment, knowing that you are living your purpose. Knowing that you are living your purpose. That's what the Durga brings to us. That's what the Mother brings to us. She is absolutely to be revered. But we cannot revere her in isolation of ourselves. We need to know that there is a connection there, and it's a deep one. If we just revere her because we are afraid of her, then that's not going to serve us. But if we revere her because we know, or at least we're willing to take a chance on knowing, that we are actually an extension of her, that she's present within us, and that her grace is part of us, and that grace can make big difference in this world, then suddenly life becomes so purposeful. And not in an egotistical way, but in a humble way, where we're willing to show up and do our own work for the sake of ourselves and for the sake of all others. Because the more you're healed, the less violence you bring into the world, the more peace you bring. I'll stop there and say any questions or reflections. Yes?
Could you speak more to the aspect of Kali Ma and why Durga needs her and how that applies to us?
Certainly, absolutely. Are you always happy? Are you always sad? Are you always angry? Are you always happy? Are you always jealous? Are you always generous? But these are all facets of your personality, correct? Okay. So each one of us has many, many facets to our personality. And from one way of looking at this, we can say that the Mother Durga, she is a warrior, yes. But there's many facets to a warrior, is there not? Kali Ma is one of those facets. Is she an individual entity? I would be misleading you if I said yes. And I would also be misleading you if I said no. So I'm going to say it depends on what context you are relating to her in. If your heart is compelled to Kali Ma, and that is your chosen avatar, then know that that is your chosen avatar. That is your chosen form of God. But she is not separate from God. She is also not the only aspect of God. That God also has the aspect of Krishna and Saraswati and Durga and Vishnu and Shiva and Christ and Buddha and Allah and all these others. But she is the one that has grabbed your heart, that has taken hold of you. So in that regard, every warrior needs to have the capacity to be straightforward in what needs to happen. Kali Ma is that intensity. She is that intensity. And if you're a devotee of her, you recognize that very quickly, that she is that intensity. Yeah. So does Durga need her? It's not need. She naturally expresses her. Kali Ma naturally comes from Durga. Just as Dakshinamurti is naturally Shiva. Just like you are naturally happy. Also sometimes naturally not. Yeah. Other questions or reflections? But I don't mean to minimize Kali Ma. I'm not minimizing her in any way, shape, or form. Kali Ma is powerful. She is all powerful. And if that is the aspect of divinity that you have chosen to identify with, then that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. I wear her amulet around my neck. I never take it off, ever. But just know that, there's actually a teaching also, and it says, the individual who has faith in a God, let them have that faith. But understand yourself that faith is only an immature faith. Because it's only when a person realizes that God is all and all is God, and that God has many names and many expressions, that is another level of faith. That is another level of understanding. That brings another level of healing. Yeah. Yes?
When you were sharing the story, you made a distinction between the male aspects of the gods, like not being able to fix their mistake, and then needing to call on the female aspects. I was just wondering if you could talk more about that distinction.
Sure, absolutely. So, in order to speak on that, we need to keep in our mind that there are different levels of existence, right? So we have this material world. And in this material world, everything is separate. Like you're sitting over there and I'm sitting over here, and you go by one name and I go by another, and we have a male in the room and the rest are female. We divvy things up like this. We categorize things. We like to segregate them. And we think it helps us understand them better. So the gods are no different when they embody, really. I mean, they have different abilities and understandings than we do, but when they embody, they are susceptible to the same natural laws as we are. They are susceptible to the categorization, the separation, and Brahma is Brahma and Shiva is Shiva when they're in a physical body. And they die too. They're born, they maintain for a while, and they die. So when Brahma gave this demon who became Mahishasura this boon, he did it knowing, or maybe he was ignorant of it, but knowing that what he was saying was that the incarnated Brahma, the incarnated Vishnu, the incarnated Shiva, Indra, any of the incarnated male aspects could not inflict anything on him. He was now, immune to their power. He was immune to them. So if in this material world the male cannot correct the situation, then the opposite of the male must be able to. The opposite of the male is the female. This is what we have created in this world. We've said there is male and there is female. Not talking about neutral genders or anything along those lines, but just, biologically speaking. That's not entirely correct either, because there is a third and a fourth also there, but we're not going to go there right now. So the opposite of the male will be able to address this. And it's not even, that's kind of the material, but the reality is that the power that Brahma had was Shakti's power. He cut himself off from that power by giving this boon to this demon. And he also cut the Shakti that exists in every other male, he cut that off from being able to address this demon. So he had to go to the source of the Shakti. And in order to address this demon in the material world, Shakti could not show up as a male. She had to show up, or it had to show up as a feminine, as a female. Yeah. In order to correct this human mistake. But in the realms, in the heavenly realms, there's no man and woman, there's no male and female, there's no gender. There's no characteristic like that in the heavenly realms. The deities, as they manifest in a physical body, that's when they become male or female or other. That's when they become that, That's when they become an elephant-headed deity or a lion-headed deity. It's only when they embody. But when they're not embodied, they're just consciousness, their consciousness, and that's all that they are, in a very grand way. That's all that they are. Does that make sense? I know it's confusing, right? But think about it. Go back to the Bhagavad Gita, right? Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna is standing there talking to Krishna. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita is God, right? Krishna is God, and Arjuna, and is God incarnated in this body right here, Krishna. And he's a great warrior. And Arjuna is his human cousin, some familial relationship. And they're having this conversation on a battlefield. And Krishna keeps talking about, previously, before time present, before Arjuna's life, a previous life, and a previous life before that. And Arjuna's looking at him, and he's like, I'm starting to think that you're not who I think you are. You're not just my cousin. Who are you? Why is it that you speak like this to me about previous, how many times has this war happened in your opinion, Immeasurable number of times. And it always has the same outcome. It's already done. So do your duty. Show up and fight your battle. Right? So there's that again. Show up and fight your battle. So Arjuna finally gets it in his mind that Krishna is some aspect of God. And he says to him, show me your true nature. Show me your true nature. I want to know you, who you really are, what you really are. You can imagine Krishna's like, that is probably not a good idea. But Arjuna's like, no, really, I'm ready. Show me the truth. So he does. And when he does, it's not a man that Arjuna sees. It's an intense light. A brilliant 10,000 suns light, as if you were standing right at it, right there with it. And it was surrounding you and moving through you and throughout everything. And Arjuna just said, whoa, can you go back to something I understand, please? Because this is entirely too much for me and my human brain. And so Krishna went back to the human form, because that's what's understandable to us. So Kali comes forward in a human form. Durga comes forward in a human form. All these different aspects of the one come forward in forms that we will identify with, that we will be able to relate to. Why are there so many? Why isn't there just one? There should just be one form, right? One God, one form. How many people are there on the planet right now? 8 billion, just about. 8 billion people. 8 billion temperaments. 8 billion expectations. 8 billion collections of experiences. There could be 8 billion avatars. One for every temperament. And then there could be 8 billion more waiting in the wings for the next generation. Because God comes to you the way that you need God. God comes to you the way that you're ready for God. God comes to you in a way that will potentially cause your heart to beat and for you to know it. So for some it's Kali, for others it's Krishna, for others it's Christ. Hindus are called the most tolerant religion on the earth. I don't like the word tolerant, but in this moment, the most tolerant, the most inclusive. Because they say, it's great you call him Christ. Yay, Christ. Let's all pray to Christ. Let's do it. It's great you call it Allah. Let's call it Allah. Everybody call him Allah. Let's do it. Let's pray to that. We call it Shiva. We call it Durga. They're like, it doesn't matter what you call it. What matters is that you call it. What matters is that you call. I'll stop there. Any other questions or reflections before we end? We're good? That was a lot this morning, huh? All of this because of a little tick. So just real quick before we end, very brief story. So this morning, one of the employees had a tick on them. And I told some of you the story in the meditation this morning. I had a tick on him, and so everybody's going around looking for tweezers to get the tick out, and put a little oil on there and stuff. And he's fine. But I couldn't help but think after, I wonder if they put the tick outside or if they killed it. Now, if I asked for a show of hands in this room, how many of you would have put the tick outside? Yay. Most other people would have killed it. Why would you have killed it? Why? Because what?
I hate them.
Why do you hate them?
I have a personal vendetta.
Because you have a personal vendetta.
I think as a child.
Yeah, I have Lyme's too, and I will have it for the rest of my life. I understand where you're coming from, personal vendetta, right? Because it's a disease-ridden little thing that will spread that disease to everything else that it touches, right? Potentially. Some poor little bunny or some poor deer, right? Aren't we that? Aren't we like that? Don't we carry our disease out and touch every other little thing with whatever it is that we're carrying, with our difficulties, with our violences? And yet we use that little tick's capacity to harm as an excuse to kill it. And so what I half jokingly, but not really, said this morning was, so that means that when someone comes for us, when something comes for us to annihilate us because of the harm we inflict, we cannot complain because we killed the tick because we felt it was inflicting harm. How hypocritical would it be if we expected them to let us live while still inflicting harm? It would be hypocritical, wouldn't it? So the only thing that we're left to do is appreciate the fact that we have free will. We have the free will to stop inflicting harm. We have the free will to stop flushing the tick down the toilet or setting it on fire and instead just putting it back out to nature and letting it go its own way. We have the capacity to change. So change. Absolutely. And be grateful for whatever you have. Whether today you're going to your barbecues and you're eating burgers and hot dogs or you're having salad, just know that there was a sacrifice that was made there for you. There was a harm that was committed. So when you eat that, you eat it with absolute love and absolute gratitude so that as it becomes part of you, it doesn't become a detrimental part that contributes to violence. Instead, it becomes a contribution to healing. I'll leave it there. Yeah. So let's sit talk. Close the eyes. Take a breath in and a breath out. Draw the hands together in front of the heart. And together we'll lift our voices in Om. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Bowing the head to the heart, acknowledging all that is. And then draw the face to center, releasing the hands. Thank you all so much for being here today. And every time that you are here, I so appreciate your presence and your reflections. And by all means, I'm not for whatever it is that's going to come down and, blame us for the harm that we commit. I'm just trying to suggest to you that even the act of killing a little insect because we're afraid of that insect is an act that we need to look at and understand why we're doing it and how that reflects on us and every other action we take. And if we want to come into this intense, intimate relationship with our Creator, as well as with our own true self, then we have to understand the impact of our behaviors and correct them. We need to. We do. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all. Be well.